Hello everyone, wishing you all a very happy and prosperous new year. May you achieve success in anything that you do and may you get a great GMAT score. So now all of my regular viewers already know the drill. What do we do in this series? We come up with one question every Friday. Today we are going to do a verbal question from the GMAT exam and we try to solve that question together, and then I help you crack the question with some tips and tricks that can be used in further solving of similar types of questions. So today we are going to have a look at a CR question which is of the strengthening type. This is put at a level of 705 plus. Although it might not seem to be a very difficult question, but the options are tricky. So you have to be very careful when you are analyzing the options while solving this particular question. So like always, take 2 minutes to solve the question by pausing the video here and resume to have a look at the solution. Okay guys, so now let's start solving the question. What is the first step to solving any CR question? The first step is to read the question stem. The question stem actually tells you what type of question it is or what do you have to do with the information, that is the argument. So here what does the question stem say? Which of the following, if true, would most help to strengthen? So we know this is a strengthening question. Very simple, straightforward. Strengthen the claim that Lance or Meadows was used as a ship repair base by the 11th century Viking explorers. Okay, because we have not read the argument, we might not find this information very appealing or very clear in the first go, but we have deduced that this is a strengthening question. Now step 2 is, let's go back to the argument. Let's try and understand what the argument is trying to say. So what is a strengthening question, or what do we do in a strengthening question? Now in a strengthening question, our aim is to provide evidence in the form of additional information that is going to support your argument, or in other words, support the conclusion. So strengthening and weakening are the two most basic type of CR questions that you might get on the GMAT critical reasoning. These are such types in which you can have an easy question and or even a more difficult or harder questions. So this is such a flexible question type that it can be framed into any level of question for your GMAT. Now, keeping this in mind, we will move to the third step, that is deconstructing your argument. So, what do we mean by deconstruction of the argument? In deconstructing the argument, we will break down the argument into premise and conclusion. So, it's important to identify the conclusion of the argument, because what do we have to do in strengthening? We have to support or we have to strengthen the argument. That is the conclusion. So we will have to identify the conclusion in order to strengthen it, which can be done only when we deconstruct the argument. So let's read the argument. What is the argument saying? Some scholars believe that Lance or Meadows. Now GMAT will, give you terms and words which are difficult to pronounce in order to confuse you, in order to waste your time. So quickly just convert these terms into a short form which is easy to remember and easy to pronounce. So let's just call it LAM or LAM. So some scholars believe that LAM in Newfoundland was a ship repair base for the 11th century Viking explorers of the land that the Vikings called Vinland. So the scholars believe that this LAM was a ship repair base. Artifacts discovered at LAM include carved pieces of wood similar to wooden ship repair pieces excavated from a 19th century Viking settlement in Ireland. Now what is the second sentence saying? that some of the artifacts which have been discovered at this place Lam include carved pieces of wood, and this wood is matching the wooden ship repair pieces which were excavated from the Viking settlement. So in other words, what is the argument trying to say? That this ship repair base was being used by the Vikings. So in other words, what can be the conclusion, or what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that the ship repair base was used by the Vikings, or in other words, whatever the scholars believed, that was true, that LAM was the ship repair base used by the Viking explorers. So this LAM was the ship repair base used by Vikings. This is our conclusion. And what is the second line? The second line is our premise or premise which supports the fact or the conclusion. What is the premise? That artifacts discovered are similar to the wooden ship repair pieces. So artifacts from your LAM are similar to wooden pieces at the Viking settlement. That means the Vikings were present at LAM. That is what we have to strengthen. So we need additional information, or in the options we are going to look for an option that is going to provide us some information, some extra or additional information that is going to strengthen this point. So in strengthening and weakening questions, you will generally see that the correct answer is going to be an information that is not already present in the argument. It is a new information whose role is to support the argument. Okay? So with this in mind, that this is what we have to strengthen, now we will move to the options. Okay guys, now what was our shadow answer? Now you would say, what is a shadow answer? Ma'am is coming up with new terms. Shadow answer is nothing but an answer in your own words. Remember, in the last step, I told you that this is something, or this is the aim with which we will enter into the options, or we will start analyzing the options. So our shadow answer is something or some evidence that is going to support our conclusion. And what was the conclusion? The conclusion was that LAM was used as a ship repair base by the Vikings in 11th century. Okay, that was our conclusion. So we have to look for additional information, or we have to look for an option that is going to support this. Now let's have a look at the first one. A. Ship repair facilities have existed in Newfoundland since the late 1700s. Are we concerned about the 1700s? When the first permanent European settlements, we are talking about Vikings. We are not talking about European settlements. Our argument is talking about Vikings. So we can safely eliminate A. A is not talking about what we need. Let's have a look at B. The main written sources of information concerning Vinland are two Icelandic sagas that disagree about the type of sailing vessel used to explore Vinland. Now, are we trying to establish what type of sailing vessel, or is our conclusion concerned with this type of sailing vessel? No. Our conclusion is concerned with the fact that LAM was used as a ship repairing base. So, this is again, you can say, out of scope or not relevant to the argument, or it's not useful in strengthening our conclusion. Let's have a look at C. Any Vikings who explored Vinland must have been based in Greenland. Okay, But during the 11th century, the Viking settlements in Greenland had neither the population nor the wealth to send ships to explore Vinland. Okay, now here you might feel that there is a lot of information, maybe it is connected to our conclusion. But what is the option talking about? The option is actually talking about that the Vikings who explored Vinland in the 17th century, they were based in Greenland, means they had originated in Greenland and then they had explored your Vinland. But the option also says that the Greenland did not have enough population or wealth to send the ships. But are we concerned about the origin of these ships, or where are these ships coming from? Is our conclusion related to that? Our conclusion has to prove, or the answer has to prove that yes, Lamb was a ship repair base. Where the ships were coming from, that is not our point of question. So we can eliminate C. Let's have a look at D. The carved pieces of wood. Okay, this looks interesting now. Found at Lamb are almost identical to the carvings made by Native Americans who lived near Lamb Meadows in the 11th century. That means the carved pieces of wood that were found at Lamb are identical to something that was made by the Native Americans. So that means this will suggest that the lamb was used by the Native Americans and not by the Vikings. So this is actually what? This is weakening our argument, or this is attacking our conclusion, but this is a strengthening question. We don't want a weakener as our answer. So eliminate D. So now what are we left with? E. We can directly mark E as the correct answer. But let's understand. What if this option was not at the end? It was somewhere in between. I am sure half of you would have eliminated E in the first try, but only come back to it because you felt that other options were not making sense or the other options were wrong. That is what I also did in my first try. I felt neither of the options were making sense. But let's analyze E. What is E saying? A number of clothes fastening pins of an 11th century Viking design were among the artifacts unearthed at the Lamb. So, a number of cloth fastening pins. Cloth fastening pins, the clips that we use when we hang clothes on the rope at our homes. So these pins were found among the artifacts unearthed at Lamb. Now how does this strengthen our argument? This seems to be a very irrelevant information. But think logically. Who will be using these clothes fastening pins? People? Okay? Or Vikings? So, if the clothes fastening pins of the Vikings were found at Lamb, that means people were staying there at Lamb, or at least people were present there at Lamb for a certain amount of time. That is, Vikings were present at Lamb at that time, and this strengthens our conclusion. That means Lamb was being inhabited by the Vikings, or the Vikings were present at Lamb in the 11th century. So that means if they were present, they must be using it as a ship repair base. So this is the only option which confirms the presence of the Vikings at the Lamb in the 11th century. So although this information might seem insignificant in the first read, this is the only option which strengthens our argument, and thus E is the correct choice. So all of you who have gone for E, very congratulations, you have marked the correct option. So I hope with the help of this small question, you were able to get a bit of clarity into the strengthening type of CR. Stay tuned to this series and I will be solving other types of CR questions as well. If you like my content, please hit the like button and share it with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Till then, Happy studying.